Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be talking about luxury watches, specifically how to spot fake ones. You know those sneaky counterfeits? You sent over some fascinating articles about authentication, and wow, I had no idea how good these counterfeiters have gotten.
Yeah, you would not believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these fakes are so convincing,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to those iconic models,
Yeah.
like the ones you always see in movies. Take the Rolex Submariner, for example. That's one of the most counterfeited watches out there.
Oh yeah, the Submariner. I think I saw a documentary about that once. It's a real classic.
It is a classic, and that's exactly why it's a prime target for counterfeiters. People are willing to pay a lot of money
Mm-hmm.
for that, iconic design
Right.
and the prestige that comes with it. But there are ways to tell the real deal from a fake.
Oh really? Like what?
Well, one thing experts look at is the engraving on the case back. On an authentic Submariner, the engravings are crisp, perfectly aligned, and they have a certain depth to them. Counterfeiters often have trouble replicating that level of precision, so if you see any engravings that look even slightly off, that's a red flag.
Gotcha. So it's all in the details.
Exactly. Another thing to pay attention to is the movement. The movement is the heart of the watch. It's the mechanism that powers everything, all the hands and complications. It's like the engine of a car.
Makes sense. So what about the movement can give away a fake?
Well, on a real Rolex, the movement is a work of art. Every tiny component is meticulously finished and decorated. With a fake, you might see rough edges, misaligned parts,
Yeah.
or even parts that just don't belong in that model, like trying to fit a V8 engine in a compact car. It just wouldn't work.
So it's not just about the outside. The inside matters just as much.
Absolutely. That's why authenticating a luxury watch is about more than just looking at it. It involves a detailed inspection of the entire watch.
One of the sources you sent mentioned certificates of authenticity. Why are those so important?
A certificate of authenticity is like a passport for your watch. It's proof that it's genuine and that all of its parts are original. This protects you from getting scammed, and it also has a big impact on the watch's resale value.
I see. It's like buying a piece of art. You want to know it was painted by the artist it's supposed to be by?
Precisely. And just like with art, there's a whole market for forged watches, and some of them are very convincing. That's why getting a certificate from a reputable expert is crucial, especially if you're spending a lot of money.
So you're saying I can't just rely on the box and papers that come with the watch?
Unfortunately, no. Those can be fake too. In fact, one of the articles you shared mentioned a case where someone bought a vintage Patek Philippe with what looked like the original box and papers. But when an expert opened it up, they found out the movement belonged to a completely different watch.
Wow, so someone basically Frankensteined a watch together and tried to pass it off as a real Patek Philippe?
It happens more often than you think. That's why you can't just rely on superficial checks. A true authentication is a multi-step process.
All right, so walk me through it. What does an expert actually do when they're authenticating a watch?
It starts with a thorough visual inspection, like a detective examining a crime scene. Every detail matters. The materials, the engravings, even the way the crown feels when you wind it.
So it's more than just making sure the logo looks right.
Much more. We're looking for anything that seems off. Does the font on the dial match the era the watch is from? Are the hands the correct shape? Is the bezel aligned properly? Even the lume can be a giveaway.
It's a loon.
The luminous material that makes the hands glow in the dark.
Oh, right. I had no idea there were so many things to look for.
It takes years of experience and a keen eye for detail. But the visual inspection is just the first step.
So what happens next? Do you, like, x-ray the watch or something?
Well, you're not too far off. For a true authentication, the watch has to be opened up. This allows us to examine the movement in detail. That's often where we find the most telling signs of a fake.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. You're actually opening up the heart of the watch.
Exactly. And it's not just about looking for obvious signs of tampering. We also perform tests to analyze the materials, the construction, even the lubricants used in the movement. These tests can help us determine if the watch is really from the period it's claimed to be from.
Wow, this is incredible. It's like a watch autopsy.
You could say that. It requires a deep understanding of horology,
Metrology.
the art and science of timekeeping.
So after the watch autopsy, what happens next? You just put it back together and give it a clean bill of health?
Well, before we do that, there's one more crucial step, connecting the dots. The serial number is like the watch's fingerprint. It tells us where and when it was made.
So every watch has its own unique ID.
It does. And it's this ID that lets us trace the watch's history and verify its authenticity. We check the serial number against the manufacturer's records to make sure it's genuine. and that it matches the model and features it's supposed to have.
So if the serial number doesn't match, that's a bad sign.
It's a huge red flag. And it's not just the serial number on the case that matters. The bracelet, the movement, any paperwork, they should all have matching numbers.
Wow, it's like serious detective work.
It is. Authenticating a luxury watch is a meticulous process. It requires expertise, precision, and a deep understanding of watchmaking. And even then, there are still challenges, especially in the digital age.
Speaking of the digital age, I was wondering about that. Is there a way to authenticate watches online? It seems like everything is moving online these days.
You're right, there are online services that offer authentication. But they have some limitations. Most of them rely on photos or videos that you submit, which can be hard to capture accurately. And then you have to wait for an expert to review them, which can take days or even weeks.
So it's not exactly instant.
Not quite. And that's where things get really interesting. There are new technologies emerging that could completely change the way we authenticate watches.
Oh, new technology. I love new technology. What kind of technology are we talking about?
Well, one of the most exciting developments is the use of artificial intelligence, or AI for short, in watch authentication.
AI, that's wild. So like robots that can spot fake watches?
Not robots exactly, but close. There's a company called Hoken. They've developed this platform called TrustWatch. It uses AI to analyze images of watches, and it can identify even the tiniest little details that might point to a fake.
So instead of waiting for a human expert, you could just use an app on your phone to scan a watch and get an answer right away.
That's the goal. And the really cool thing is, they trained this AI on a huge database of watches. Thousands and thousands of images, both real and fake. Each one carefully analyzed by experts.
So the AI is learning from the best.
Exactly. And the more data it gets, the more accurate it becomes. According to one of the sources you sent, TrustWatch has an accuracy rate of over 96%.
Wow, that's impressive. But how does it actually work? Does it look for specific things like the engravings or the movement?
It analyzes everything, just like a human expert would. The dial, the hands, the case, the engravings, even the way the light reflects off of the surfaces.
So it's looking at the whole picture.
Exactly. It's searching for patterns and anomalies that might suggest a fake. And because it's been trained on so much data, it can pick up on really subtle clues, things that even a trained human eye might miss.
This is blowing my mind. So are human experts going to be out of a job then? Is AI going to take over watch authentication completely?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
AI is a powerful tool, but it can't replace human expertise entirely. Think of it more like an assistant, something that can help authenticators do their job even better.
Right, like a super-powered magnifying glass.
Precisely. It can help experts be more efficient and accurate, especially when they're dealing with a lot of watches. But there will always be a need for human judgment, especially for those really tough cases.
I see. So it's like a team effort.
Exactly. And you know what's really interesting? AI could actually give more power to the buyers.
Oh, how so?
Imagine being able to browse a vintage market or an online auction, and you can instantly check if a watch is real just by using your phone.
That'd be incredible. No more worrying about getting ripped off.
Exactly. It could make the luxury watch market much more transparent and accessible to everyone.
I love that idea. But let's be realistic for a second. If this technology becomes really common, won't the counterfeiters just find new ways to trick it? It feels like a never-ending battle.
It's a valid concern, and it's something that experts are always thinking about. As technology changes, so do the methods of the counterfeiters.
So it's like an arms race.
You could say that, but the cool thing about AI is it can learn and adapt too. As counterfeiters come up with new techniques, we can train the AI on those new patterns, so it keeps getting better at spotting fakes.
So it's like a detective that's always one step ahead of the criminals.
Exactly. And that's why I think AI has so much potential to really help us fight against counterfeit goods.
I agree. It's exciting to think about how it could change the market. But it also raises some interesting questions.
Definitely. It makes you wonder, in a world where technology can create almost perfect fakes, what does authenticity even mean anymore?
That's a deep question. And I think a lot of people are struggling with that, not just in the watch world, but in art music, even information.
That's true. And it's a conversation we need to be having, especially now in the digital age.
You're right. But before we get too philosophical, let's talk about watches again. You mentioned that certificates of authenticity can really affect a watch's resale value. But what about AI authentication? Will those digital verdicts hold the same weight?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's something that's still being debated. Some experts think that AI authentication could become the new standard because it's more efficient and objective.
So you're saying that a digital stamp of approval from an AI could be just as valuable as a certificate from a human expert.
It's possible, especially as AI technology keeps improving.
Yeah.
But there are also those who believe that the human element will always be important.
I can see both sides. Human authenticators have experience and expertise.
They can see things that an AI might miss, and they can also provide context and history that a machine just can't.
Right. And let's not forget the emotional side of owning a luxury watch. For a lot of collectors, it's not just about the watch itself, it's about the story behind it, the craftsmanship, the heritage. It's hard to capture that with technology.
I agree, there's a certain romance to it. Knowing that your watch has been passed down through generations, or that it was worn by someone famous, those stories add to its value in a way that a digital certificate can't.
Absolutely, and that's something we need to remember. As we embrace these new technologies, we can't let efficiency and convenience overshadow the human connection. That makes these objects so special.
Well said. This whole conversation has been really eye-opening.
It has. It's made me realize how complicated authenticity is in the digital age. It's not just about technology, it's about history, craftsmanship, and the stories that connect us to these objects.
That's a great way to put it. And leads to a really interesting question for our listeners to think about.
All yours. What's the question?
As AI becomes more and more common in authenticating all kinds of things, from watches to art, how will that change how we think about value? Will we still care about the stories and the history and the human element behind these objects? Or will we just rely on algorithms to tell us what's real and what's worth something?
That's a really good question. It makes you think, what if an AI says a watch is authentic, but it doesn't have that human connection, that sense of history? Will it still be as special?
Exactly. It forces you to think about what really matters to you. When you're looking at these luxury items, is it the brand name, the craftsmanship, the story? Or is it just what an algorithm says?
I don't think there's an easy answer to that. It's something we'll all have to figure out as technology keeps changing.
I agree. But that's what makes this so interesting. It makes us think about our own values
Yeah.
and what we believe about authenticity and craftsmanship
Yeah.
and how technology affects all of that.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today. We've talked about the tiny details of watch movements and the amazing potential of AI, and we even got a little philosophical about value and authenticity in the digital age.
It's been a great conversation. I hope our deep dive has helped you understand just how complex the luxury watch market is and why authentication is so important.
Me too. And for anyone out there, whether you're a serious collector or just starting to learn about luxury watches, remember, knowledge is power. The more you know, the better choices you can make, and the more you can appreciate the true value of these amazing timepieces.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yep.
And who knows, maybe one day you'll be using an AI app to authenticate your own watch collection. The future of watch authentication is definitely going to be exciting.
It is. Thanks for joining me today. It's been fun talking watches with you.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of watch authentication. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those watch hands ticking.